Loud. Okay, we're recording. All right. Hey, and Johnny's here, and again, thank you everybody. Looks like folks are joining. Hopefully, you've grabbed your dinner and are able to listen in. We're also live on Facebook, and we'll record this just in case you need to go and review again. But we've got two great presenters today. We had a wonderful session in the afternoon, and I wanted to these are I've gotten to know Sarah and Johnny really well, and they've got some really interesting ideas what they're doing for real estate investors like us. Livable.com, based out of San Francisco, Homeroom based out of Kansas City, but they're in what I call prop tech space, and they're here to help small and medium-sized real estate investors like we have here. So I'm going to read a quick bio for Sarah, and then we'll do about 25 minutes or so with Sarah's presentation, and then we'll have Johnny present, and then we'll do a Q&A after that. So real quick, so Sarah Hoverson is an account executive with Livable, and she's been with the company for 2 years. She's a Texas native and now calls sunny San Diego home. And so I want to just pause there, okay? So there's all this California bashing that's going on, right, on Facebook about how bad California is, but we'll take Sarah in exchange for the 150,000 people that have moved to Texas. So I think that's a fair trade, right? So Sarah, I'm glad you're contrarian and moved to beautiful. Of course, you can't go wrong.
Get here fast enough.
Exactly. There you go. Good for you. Good for you. She loves having the chance to share Livable's services and mission of conservation with housing providers and investors in California and beyond. So obviously, conservation is near and dear to me. I'm kind of a greenie, so really appreciate that. Livable is a premier software company whose vision is to bring enterprise-level billing and analytic systems to multifamily owners and investors of all portfolio sizes. Based in San Francisco, they have expanded in the past several years to promote accountability and conservation from renters, while increasing the ROI to housing providers on their multifamily assets. So I just want to point out that, look, between the politicians and tenant rights issues, the small homeowners, the small real estate investors, they're getting bashed by everybody, and a lot of people don't realize that. So here's a company that's actually trying to help small and large and medium-sized real estate investors. So with that, Sarah, you are a co-host. Thank you for making time for us twice today. So it's all yours.
And, thank you. Thank you for the intro. Yeah, happy to be here and kind of share a little bit more about Livable, about our services. As you mentioned, I'm the account executive here. So for anyone that's on the call that would like to get in touch, you'll be speaking with me directly, and I'm happy to have a more in-depth conversation about your individual situations. The presentation that I have is a little kind of high-level overview, kind of just, gives a brief overview of the program and what we can offer, but happy to kind of chat in more detail on a one-to-one call. And my presentation is related to utility expenses during COVID times, and I am going to run through the slides kind of quickly. So if anyone has questions, they can either wait until the end. I think we're going to have a Q&A. You can also enter them into the chat box at the bottom of the screen. If you click chat, and it should pull up to the side, you can answer those, and then I can answer those whenever Johnny's doing his presentation. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and confirm that the slides are moving. A little problem earlier. Okay. Okay.
All right.
Let's do this. Okay, so there's the first slide. Let's just check to see if it moves.
Yep, moving.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Okay, and I'm going to turn myself off for a moment. Okay, great. So who we are, Livable is a nationwide utility billing and management company. We've been in business since 2009, and we were founded in San Francisco by a group of owners and operators, for owners and operators. So our chairman and founders needed a solution for their own multifamily properties in the city because they recognized that their tenants were being too wasteful and that their utility costs continued to go up and up and up. And this was a solution that they brought to the San Francisco market and have since expanded across the state of California into Washington, Oregon, and now we're in several other states, including all the way in New York and Florida. So kind of coast to coast. Our vision is to build a community around conservation. And our mission is to bring enterprise level tools to independent rental owners. So with COVID-19 and shelter in place orders, landlord utility costs are rising. So we've already, seen this happening with tenants being home for the majority of the day versus being, where they normally would be out of the home at work for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. Now they're home. So that means increased water usage, showers, toilet flushes, electricity expenses, etc. We don't know if there's any more restrictions coming, right? So in San Francisco and Los Angeles, there's been, eviction moratoriums on raising rents. Things are really kind of in a holding pattern right now, and it's really, unpredictable as to what the future holds. So we advise to kind of, weigh your options now and be proactive in the ways that you still can. Livable has a unique opportunity to educate tenants. So anyone that has a direct line of communication with residents on a monthly basis has a great opportunity to inform them of what their utility costs are, kind of what their usage is, point out those fluctuations in usage, and also educate them on the charges. Most tenants don't have any idea how much water rates are, what trash rates are. It's kind of, ignorance is bliss. And if you don't have a direct reason to use less in the form of, an expense, then there's really not an incentive to do so. So, tying tenant usage to their wallets does result in changing habits, including things like reporting leaks faster, updating occupancy counts, which can be really important, especially in tougher rent control markets. And so, we take this opportunity on a monthly basis to provide conservation tips. There's this great study that was done by the EPA several years ago that found that just providing tenants with information on their water consumption reduced their water usage by 15% on average. And that's not even passing through any of the charges. That is simply from educating tenants. So if you think about, the rates and how those are increasing, anything that you can do to help decrease those costs is going to make a big difference to your bottom line. Here's some trends that we've seen in the industry over the past decade or so. Water and sewer rates are skyrocketing. It says here, over 30% increase in rates over the past decade. In a study of the country's 50 largest metropolitan areas, those water and sewer rates are rising faster than inflation and have been for 8 consecutive years. So, with the statewide rent control here in California being capped at 5% plus the cost of living. And then, you know, in stricter rent control markets being more around the 3 or 4% range, you know, your rent increases are not going to cover the increased costs of utilities, as well as all the other things that you need to do at your properties, like improvements or flipping units and things like that. Same thing goes for electricity. Residential electricity prices have risen steadily over the past decade, over 15% in the past 10 years. Recycling is also a hot topic in these larger metropolitan areas. China has essentially stopped buying all the recycling from the United States in a major way. And so now these recycling companies like Recycla and Recology are looking to make, you know, money in other ways, since they've lost a lot of the income that they were getting from selling it. So they're, you know, imposing fees and fines for improperly sorting. And a lot of the times those fees and fines are going to the property owners. The pandemic has also caused a major increase in plastics and waste. There's 30% more waste worldwide coming from things like masks, as well as a return to single-use plastics. People are not reusing plastics as much. And, you know, this is also just causing rates to increase from both trash companies and recycling companies. Looking at kind of California specifically and legislation here, there was a Senate bill that was passed a couple years ago that is going to require, or that does require, that individual submeters be installed or put in place for all new multifamily housing built after January 1st of 2018. And the reason for that is that in California, 80% of tenants historically have not paid for water, which is just an insane statistic. And, you know, again, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, if something is free, there's no incentive to use less. California was in a drought state for 3 years just recently. And, you know, that is kind of a cyclical trend. So it's likely that we'll be in a drought state again. And it's really, really important that we kind of take, you know, take hold and take control over the situation, and you do whatever we can to promote conservation and, you know, of our finite natural resources. So there's other states like Texas that already have statewide regulations for submetering and for the ratio utility billing system, which is kind of an alternative to submetering that I'll get to. Some form of rent control is spreading across the country. So if you're in California, you know that's already happened here. So your options are limited in how much you can increase rents at your property. So more and more owners are finding ways to increase other income. Other income could mean things like pet rent, parking, storage, and utility expenses. There's an article in Forbes back in April that kind of addressed these other income opportunities and gave this great example of utility billing and other ways to kind of increase your additional income and what it means for the valuation of your property. So just as an example, if your building is valued at a 7% cap rate and you add $50,000 in additional other income, that actually adds more than $700,000 in value to your property. So again, it's really important to start looking at that, looking ways to do that now more than ever, and especially valuable whenever if and when you decide to sell or refinance. So what are your options for reducing your utility expenses? The first option would be submetering. Submetering is where you install individual meters to track the flow of water coming in and going out of individual units. This can be very expensive. I was talking to someone today in Los Angeles, and it was going to cost $7,500 to install one extra meter on her property, where she has 4 individual houses on one property. I've heard anywhere, from $1,000 plus. You have to take the time to install, as well as go through permitting and stuff. So it can be a lengthy process. The good news is that it's the most accurate way to measure water flow and wastewater. So you're able to bill back for 100% of your bills. Unfortunately, not all buildings can support submeters, depending on the age of the pipes and the layouts. And a lot of submetering companies do have unit minimums. The alternative method to submetering your property would be to use a ratio method. That acronym is RUBS, Ratio Utility Billing System. There's no upfront cost to do that because it's basically just done off of an allocation method or an algorithm. So as a software company, we're able to kind of set the property up in our system, get the relevant information that we need, and just plug in your bills and bill tenants for their portion of the usage. Now, because it is not a true accurate measure and it is an estimation, we can only pass through up to 90% of the utility costs. So we do need to factor in kind of a buffer to make sure that we're not overcharging anybody. But we do take into account things like in-unit amenities, like a dishwasher and washer dryer. If someone is hand washing dishes, they're actually using about 30% more water than their neighbor who might have a dishwasher installed. Obviously, if someone has in-unit laundry, they're going to be using more water than their neighbor who does not. Also, shared amenities like shared laundry room, swimming pool, landscaping, or irrigation costs are all factored in. So we try to be as fair and accurate as possible when we are dividing up the bills. We have no unit minimums at Livable. So this is great news for anyone that might have an accessory dwelling unit on their property, or possibly just a duplex or a triplex. No unit minimums. We serve, independent owners all the way up into the mid-size and kind of garden style communities. It's certainly more effective than flat rate billing. Again, kind of thinking of out of sight, out of mind. If a tenant knows that they can use however much water they want and they're only paying $25, $30 a month, there's no incentive for them to use less. They'll be taking longer showers, having car washes. I've heard all sorts of horror stories about tenants running water at night for white noise so they can sleep, literally running a shower all night. And the landlord, you are covering that cost. So really lends to, change of habits, being more mindful of usage. This method is recommended by the National Apartment Association as well as the Environmental Protection Agency to reduce usage. It does rely on community efforts. So again, kind of we're all in this together. Let's all do our part. So a good example of RUBS and its effect on your net operating expenses. So here's the kind of the financial impact of converting to tenant paid utilities. Here, assume you have a 150 unit complex and the monthly water bill is $6,300. If you can transition a conservative 80% of this bill back to tenants, you'll realize a monthly savings of over $5,000 and a yearly savings of over $60,000. We also typically see bills go down once the program is in place because, again, we now have the tenants' awareness and kind of mind share, and we typically see bills go down 15 to 20% over time once the building's enrolled in the program and people are responsible for their portion of the bill. So what to expect? This is kind of just an overview of what our recovery process looks like. You enroll your building. You can either send a 30-day notice to your tenants if they're on a month-to-month lease. We also have a lease addendum that could be provided to new tenants. We can download your bills directly from your utility provider if you have online access. We allocate the bills and we send to the tenants, and the tenants can pay us through our online platform, or we can post the charges to the tenant's ledger in your PM software if you use one like Yardi or Appfolio, and the tenants can pay you directly at the same time that they're paying rent. And we have a tenant support team that's amazing. So if tenants ever have questions about their bill or about the program, they can come to us and not be bothering you or your property managers. So it's important to research before implementing this type of program. Even sub-metering can have some restrictions. Some states generally do not permit for RUBS billing, and some others have restrictions. In California, the good news is that it is still allowable and completely legal, with the exception of San Jose. So it's the only place that does not currently allow this type of program, but everywhere else in California, yes. Again, if you have specific questions about your city or municipality, chances are we already operate there, so I'd be happy to have a conversation with you on that. Another service that Livable offers is benchmarking and analytics. So certain properties for commercial, mixed use, and multifamily are required to submit their energy reports to the government through Energy Star reporting. And, if you don't already have someone taking care of that for you, Livable can, which can save your team time and resources. It's also important to be having an eye on, the performance of your property, and how is your property performing compared to other similar assets, either in your market or in your portfolio. So having real-time data and analytics into meter reads, not just for water, but for electricity, gas, et cetera, can help to identify things like leaks, faulty meters. There could be billing anomalies or inconsistencies from the provider. So it's really a way to kind of have a much closer and more detailed look at the performance of your properties, and hopefully help to identify areas that could be improved. So definitely something to consider if you have not before. We also don't have any minimums or size minimums for this service either. So even if you had just a handful of smaller properties, you'd still benefit from having these sorts of analytics available to you. So how can Livable help you? So our flagship product is the ratio utility billing. We can also do sub-meter billing. So even if you do install sub-meters or you already have sub-meters at your property, you probably still need someone to facilitate the billing function of that. So we have sub-meter billing, the benchmarking and monthly analytics and bill auditing, monitoring and conservation tips to tenants. We have a free recovery calculator that you can use, and I'll go ahead and put this calculator link in the chat. But this is great. You can enter in your occupancy counts as well as your previous month's bills, and it'll help to show you the breakdown of the charges, what tenants can expect to pay, as well as what your recovery can be. This is great for underwriting potential purchases as well. And then this is our email address. So if you email comesave@livable.com, that will go right to me, and I'll get in touch with you, and we can set up a time to chat a little bit further about your properties. If you have any questions at all, like I said, go ahead and email me, or you can put them in the chat, and I will do my best to answer those over the next presentation.
Awesome. Very
Yeah.
nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Look, to me, it just seems really unfair. I know that a lot of apartment buildings and homes and, were built a long time ago, and they probably didn't have the foresight to put meters on each unit. But it's only fair that the person that's using the utilities pays for those utilities. So a lot of times the burden of the utilities and the consequential waste is passed on to the owner. To me, that just seems really, really unfair. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, and it's just the fact that tenants are paying for their electricity and their gas and their cable and everything else. There's just no reason anymore that they shouldn't also be responsible for their water usage, especially considering that water is such a precious natural resource that's just being wasted. So it really, really helps move the needle by having that buy-in and accountability from the tenants.
right, right. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Sarah. Folks, we will have time for Q&A, but if you have a question, that's fresh in your mind, just shoot it over in the chat button at the bottom of the menu, and then we can go from there. So, all right. So, I also have one more great presenter. Johnny was introduced to me through a common friend, Dana over at Hemlane, and so a shout out to Dana. She's doing amazing stuff. But
She is.
she's presented to our group before, and I think it's about time I brought her back in. So, but homeroom, they've figured out with how to increase the yield for real estate investors. They've built out a very elaborate, very sophisticated, very easy to use system that allows investors and then also roommates to take advantage of co-living situations. So I know, Johnny, you and I, we've gotten to know each other and become really good friends, but really, really looking forward to you sharing how this new evolving, innovative prop tech, real tech concept is taking off. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Bobby. Really great to be here. Hello, everyone. I'm Johnny. I'm with Homeroom. Today, I'm going to be talking about key learnings from the co-living industry for all investors. So, like I said, I'm Johnny. I'm the CEO of Homeroom Co-Living. And in 2015, I was living in San Francisco, working as a VP at a bank in the financial district. And I realized that it was going to be 5 years before I was going to be able to buy a house in the city. And I just said, you know what, I've been doing real estate investing on the side. I'm going to do this full time. So I moved to Austin, Texas after analyzing all the markets in the United States for appreciation potential. I invested in Austin, and Austin's a little bit more expensive. So one of the things I was forced to do was rent out by the room because you can get more rent that way. And that, I did a number of different houses throughout Austin. It worked out really well for me. And also I made a lot of friends through having cool roommates in Austin. So that was really an enjoyable experience for me. Then I wanted to balance my real estate portfolio with something more cash flow intensive. So I switched over to Kansas City. I moved here in 2018. When I moved to Kansas City, I had trouble finding roommates for that, initial move, right? And so that was a challenge for me. And I thought there has to be a better way. I've been finding roommates for, 15 years on Craigslist and Facebook. There's got to be a better way to do this. And so that's kind of when Homeroom was born. I said, maybe we can partner with real estate investors and we can offer roommate housing in a way that's more elegant and better for everyone involved. And that's kind of what we've done with Homeroom. The things I'll be talking about today is what is co-living and why it matters to you as a standard real estate investor, how you can benefit from the co-living trend and the underlying trends that are driving co-living as an investor, and what operational process you can learn from the co-living industry. The co-living industry is young, it is innovative, it has a lot of venture capital financing. So it's people that are innovating, which is something that can't always be said for the property management space. So I definitely like to, take tips and tricks from our company and from other co-living companies that we're connected with and share them with other real estate investors. So what is co-living and why it matters to you? So co-living is post-college roommate living with luxury apartment amenities. It's sprung on the scene in the United States, and we're trailing Europe. They're actually much bigger into co-living than we are. But in 2017, when Hub House was featured in Politico, that was the big kind of unveiling of co-living in the United States. There's a lot, in 2017, 18, it was featured in Forbes a number of times, San Francisco Chronicle. Co-living is big news. It's a surging industry. What essentially it is a company stands in between a real estate investor and roommate tenants. And instead of just standard property management, there's community engagement. There's usually furnished common areas, smart home technology, and a big focus on basically making connections. That has really captured the interest of real estate developers and venture capitalists. So in 2017, when co-living kind of came onto the scene, 134 million was invested in the space that year. By 2019, 3.2 billion had been invested in the space. So it's a very hot market. And the reason for that is that the market is seen to be tremendously big. Cushman & Wakefield forecasts that co-living will be.
Hey, Johnny.
Yes.
I don't know if you're sharing anything, but if you're not, it's okay.
Oh, I apologize, Bobby. Thank you.
All right, now we want you to start all over. And I'm just kidding.
I was just yeah, I appreciate you letting me know there. Kind of real quickly, just kind of go through these. So co-living has grown, $550 billion industry in the U.S. and Europe once fully mature. That is sort of the expectation from Cushman & Wakefield, they're an established real estate company, and they have no dog in this fight. So we think it's a very credible estimate. That number sounds massive. It's $500 billion, and whenever you're talking about that from an industry size, it's something that kind of gives you pause. But here's the math on that. There's 83.1 million millennials in the United States today. And if each one of them is living in a bedroom for $500 a month, that's $479 billion per year. It's a massive market. Our company, Homeroom, focuses specifically on the Midwest and Texas. We really like the stability of the middle of America. And then very high-end tenants with really nice credit and they meet our criteria. And we're only trying to get a quarter of that in the middle of America. And so our target is $3 billion revenue from that space. But there are going to be a lot of co-living players that are going to emerge and be very successful over the next decade or so. Major demographic drivers that are kind of creating this demand are that 52% of millennials are living with their parents today. And that's the most since the Great Depression. It's a massive trend, as well as roommates. 26% of millennials are living with roommates today. And that has been trending upward since 1981. It was 11% in 1981. We've seen a linear growth through to 2020 of 26%. And that means less than 1 in 5 millennials are living alone. And so there's a couple major reasons for this. It's money is a big one, right? Number one, especially in coastal cities that are just too expensive to live alone. But also millennials are choosing to live with community. They prefer it. They want to live with roommates, or they want to live with their family, right? So the question they're asking is, why would I pay more to be lonely? And why are they lonely? Well, because the marriage age has now grown, half a decade over the last 40 years, right? So it was 25 years old in 1981. 2020, it's now at 30. So this new 20 to 35 is a new tweener stage in life. It's a pre-family stage, and the marriage is being delayed. So people are trying to find a community to fill that stage of their life. Also, they're working through student debt, so they need to save money. And generally, millennials are looking to spend money on experiences and not housing or things. So this is why the co-living industry has had such success. It's no longer just for expensive markets. We've seen about 50 co-living players emerge in the United States today. Many of them are, venture capital funded: Star City, Treehouse, June Homes, Common, and Bungalow, and Pad Split. But in the expensive markets, people are forced to co-live. You just can't afford an apartment. When I lived in San Francisco, a studio was $2,800. I could afford it, but I didn't want to. That's such a massive amount of money. In other markets, though, in the middle of, in Kansas City, people can afford a studio, but they still prefer to save 30% over a studio price. So a studio price is $850 here. They'd rather spend $500 to live with others and share the common areas and make new relationships. So everyone wants to save money. It doesn't matter if they can't afford it in the expensive markets or they're choosing to go with the cheaper option in everywhere else. So how can you benefit from the co-living trend? Invest in the path of progress and you'll always make money. That's a quote that my real estate mentor gave to me. And what that meant for me when I moved to Austin, Texas was I studied the map and I saw a rapidly expanding city, basically in a circle growing outwards. And I could tell at certain points, houses were $450,000 north of a line and $325,000 south of a line, and it was only separated by a half mile, that the expansion was eventually going to create the progress that would make that house worth $450,000. And I invested kind of all over the city in that way, and it worked out really well. Triple-digit % returns. And so really investing in the path of progress is the key here. With co-living, we're not investing in the path of geographic progress, but demographic progress, right? So we see an enlarging population of renters that do not like to live alone. They don't like studios. They don't like to buy their own homes. And so that is a growing population. And that's where I say, hey, let's invest in the path of this progress as real estate investors. How do we do that? Let's talk about it. There's an opportunity for every investor to kind of benefit from this. These companies have made hundreds of millions of dollars in enterprise value over the last couple of years, just by early adapting into a market that they saw before anyone else, because normal real estate investors have generally been slow to capitalize on the roommate market. Why are normal investors avoiding roommate housing? That's a good question. I think generally when we talk to people, it's fear of the unknown, and it sounds complicated. You have a lot of personalities, you have a lot of dynamics in a roommate house. What if the roommates fight? What if there's a lot more damage? One thing that we've learned is that similar to any property or any operational process, each process can be thought through and solved one at a time. And usually there's a pretty simple solution. In our case, when roommates don't get along, we have a roommate meeting mandated. And then we actually have an upward counselor that we have them talk to if there's specific roommates having issues, and she charges us $50 an hour. So it's not that big of a challenge for us to solve that. In terms of damages, we haven't seen that. So that hasn't been a problem. So most of the time as you dig underneath, dig into the details of things that are causing you to hesitate or be concerned, you can find simple solutions with just a little bit of creativity and focus. And that's what we've been able to do. And you can offset any additional risk that people may have we have more security deposits on a per property basis, right? So a typical property would have about $2,000 in security deposit over the top. In a co-living property, because our rent ends up being higher on a total basis, our deposit's typically about 50% more, $3,000. So why shouldn't you avoid roommate housing? Well, kind of once you've kind of navigated through the, thinking through the fear of possibly doing it, well, there's more revenue when you rent by the room, especially in specific houses. We're seeing 30 to 50% more rent revenue. Makes a massive difference. You can do a lot more you can make a lot more money with a lot less properties, a lot less headache, and a lot less geographic spread in the single market. Also, roommate revenue is more stable, right? So it sounds more dynamic, but in reality, you're diversifying your risk by having multiple tenants with multiple income streams. So if one person loses their job in a single family home, they're not going to be able to pay their rent. They're going to have to leave. You're going to get hit with a month of vacancy, probably have to pay about a month's rent to your agent to get it leased, and then probably have to pay for some repairs. So that's about a 3 months rent of expenses. In our situation, if we have a roommate that can't pay, then we'll ask them to leave. We'll set up the room again. But 5 of the 6 roommates will still be paying rent, and we'll still be making, a vast majority of our rent. And we're already making more to begin with. So even in down months in a co-living situation, you're not going to make $0. You're going to make, probably the market rate or even a little bit more. So you're not going to have $0 months. You're not going to have these giant divots that destroy your returns. So how do you as a standard real estate investor capitalize on basically this trend? One thing is, and I was actually talking to, after the noon call, one of the investors on the call about how he had turned one of his properties into a roommate house where his daughter was going to school, and then she ran out the 2 rooms, and he was getting $4,700 instead of the market rate of $3,000. So it's this can be done by pretty much anyone. It's not that complicated. It's not that hard. It's key to make sure you have the right specs on the property. You don't really want to be in an HOA, or you want to look at the bylaws. You want to have enough parking for the amount of roommates you're going to have in the property. And you want to make sure you're making significantly more by renting by the room. It is harder work. There's a little bit more headache. You don't necessarily want to make the same. So with a 3-bedroom house, maybe a little harder, or 2-bedroom, but the 5-bedroom will definitely make considerably more. The other option is to find a company that can manage the property on a per room basis for you. That would be the leasing, the management, and the compliance side. Our company Homeroom does this today. So if you have a property you're looking for essentially roommate management, we do that. We also do some standard property there are some standard property management firms that will rent by the room. One thing here is I'd recommend you have your property management firm do individual leases with each tenant. Once again, that diversifies the risk. And so each person is on the hook to pay their portion of the rent. If one person bails, you'll still get a vast majority of it. Regardless of your approach, I think the biggest takeaway here, and sort of we've had a lot of conversations over the last few years with people that initially were very skeptical of co-living and kind of have warmed to it as they saw kind of some of the trends and some of the splashy news. But it's really important to stay open to new opportunities and stay connected to trends. And that's the key in any type of investment, stocks, bonds, and real estate, right? So real estate is changing more than any time since 2008 this year. Some traditional asset classes are going to underperform in the coming decades those trends are accelerated due to COVID. A few that we want to be cognizant of is office space is a challenge with remote working adaptation kind of surging right now, and the way people think about that changing. Retail space as well as online shopping continues to take off. So new trends will emerge with outsized gains for your risk profile. That is super important. To keep in mind, you want to have the risk profile, and then you want the outsized returns for that risk profile. That's what we think co-living is for real estate today. There's always opportunities like that in every asset class. So I'm going to talk about operational processes where you can learn from co-living. Tips and tricks I got with my team, and we kind of talk through this. We have relationships with other co-living companies and things we've learned from them. So I really wanted to share that with other investors, and if you do a private management, it will be really helpful for you. First thing is, remote self-management is possible for investors today. That's something 10 years ago when I was on Bigger Pockets and talking to investors, that would be seen as like a huge faux pas. Do not self-manage, definitely don't do it remotely. Today you can. At a certain level of units, 3 to 4, you should be fine. Technology and gig economy enables this. Also, there's some really nice tools that allow management options. We talked about Dana and Hemling before. They actually specialize in helping real estate investors self-manage. I highly recommend checking them out if that's something you're looking to do. You can also self-manage remotely using your own tools by putting those together. It's also, if you're going to manage, or even if you're going to have a property manager, your standard real estate portfolio or roommate property, I highly recommend using smart tech. It's not expensive. It's consistently useful today. Smart locks on your front door is #1 and the most valuable thing that we have in our portfolio today. Managing keys is a pain in the butt. Getting access for vendors to do work, especially in between tenants, is really annoying. Doing showings remotely can be challenging. So smart locks should conquer all these challenges. And it's also a really elegant way to welcome new people to your property. Instead of meeting them with a key, you actually can just say, you can email them their code, and then they'll be able to get in their property. It's a nice way to start. Smart home thermostats, I think, are nice to have as well. One of the biggest and most urgent problems is HVAC issues. If it's too cold or too hot, you can check a smart home thermostat from your dashboard, and you can see like, hey, are they using the thermostat correctly? Occasionally, we'll find out that that's the main problem. Right? And so we're able to see that because we have smart home technology. I highly recommend doing video interviews of qualified candidates using Zoom and Calendly, just like everyone does today and everything else. Just having a video call with potential tenants can save you from having to make them drive out there, making sure you're answering their questions and providing them answers. Also highly recommend using showings coordinator software. ShowMojo and TenantTurn are both really strong options. They help you kind of weed through a lot of candidates really fast with a lot less effort. One of the values at Homeroom is we consider our members our partners in everything. We don't think, it helps them become stronger young adults, and it helps us, have a bigger reach. So we ask our tenants to do a lot for us. One of them is we have them give tours of the property of future tenants. And we also occasionally have them advertise the property. One of the other things we do is we require our candidates to interview future roommates and provide candidate feedback. That's part of the ecosystem, makes sure that everyone you know, gets along well and it's a good fit. But you can use your current tenant in a single family property to give a tour and then give feedback of a candidate, because they're going to be more candid with that current tenant than they are with you, the owner. We have something called the $25 and 30-minute rule at homeroom. If something costs less than $25 and takes less than 30 minutes, then the tenant is responsible to do that. That doesn't matter what it is. You know, if you see a mouse, buy a mousetrap. It's less than 30 minutes, less than $25. You know, obviously at the next stage, we'll escalate. We'll get a pest guy out there, but we're in this together. You're going to take the first step. We're going to teach you how to do that. We're going to provide you tips and tricks how to do that. You know, our partner members, but we're not going to, you know, do everything. We also put people on our house on furnace filter subscriptions, have them send us pictures of the changes. It's really the only way that you can ensure it gets done other than doing it yourself. And then we highly recommend beefing up your move out checklist. Super important. We're very close to being able to have people move right in after people move out because our move out checklist is so substantial and so clear. Highly recommend this as well. Tips and tricks is if your handyman is on site to do a maintenance item, then we recommend having him fill out a quick property survey form, HVAC, gutters, property upkeep, cleanliness. Just have them spend 5 minutes looking at the major systems, look at the gutters, look at the furnace filter, look at everything. Make sure that there's nothing obvious that can cause bigger, longer term damage. And so that's one of the most frustrating things for me as an early real estate investor. I went to a house that a property manager had. There was a hole in the roof with water coming down in the kitchen. The tenant, for some reason, didn't report it, which was shocking. But we're going to make sure that we're on site regularly. We have maids monthly, and we actually grade the properties for cleanliness, but just keep an eye on the property, make sure that it stays healthy. And then it's 2020, it's time to go keyless and paperless. Homeroom has never owned a printer or we don't have keys. We only accept digital deposits, digital rent, auto pay is required. So a lot of this stuff, it can get a lot easier when you kind of just push into digital and just make it your standard, especially leases and smart locks, obviously, no worrying about keys and rekeying and security. So this is the last kind of section the team worked on, and Caitlin, who's our director of operations, she is a guru of overseas team building. She worked for APM Help. They have 100 team members in the Philippines today that help do bookkeeping for property management, other property management companies. She's super good. So she provided me with a roadmap to kind of share with you. And if you are an investor of real estate or not, I highly recommend thinking through getting a VA. In the Philippines, prices range from $3 to $6 per hour. In Venezuela, we have 75 cents to $1.50 an hour. Pretty affordable prices. If you can figure out how to get the right skill sets matched to what you need, it can save you a lot of time and hassle. First thing to think about is the skills that you'll need. English proficiency, how important is that to you? And what is the political environment of the country? In Venezuela, it's tumultuous. You have to think about how consistent does this work need to be done? You probably want somewhere with less political turmoil if that's the case. Also, time zones. Do they need to be working the same time as you? Are they willing to work at night if they're in a different time zone? And then what are the internet reliability? One of the things with our Philippine team in the Philippines is we make sure that if someone doesn't show up, and they'll typically report it as an internet outage, which happens a lot, we'll check to make sure that it's not just them not showing up. It's important to kind of establish that accountability to make sure that people are consistent on your team and they understand that you're sort of like, everyone's in it together and you're kind of monitoring their performance. Another piece here is VA part 2 is how to source VAs. Onlinejobs.ph is the go-to site for VAs in the Philippines, and that is probably Caitlin made sure that I mentioned this is like the most valuable thing I'm going to share today. Highly recommend if you're going to look for a long-term VA, this is a really nice place to look for. A lot of our current team that we're building out in the Philippines, we found them on this site. Upwork and Fiverr is also a nice temporary short-term project type site. A lot of the admin's handled for you, but it's also a bit more expensive. Also, people that are spamming you, emails or found you on LinkedIn with an outbound message. A lot of times those folks are VAs for somebody else, and it's not a bad idea to just say, hey, are you interested in a role for me? You clearly got through my email filter got my attention. That means they're pretty good. So recommend kind of, Kaylin has done that a couple times, just messaging someone that messages her and say, hey, are you looking for a VA position? Some of our best people have come that way. When you have a VA working for you, it's important to think about bonuses. We give a $25 bonus to one of our marketing posters. It's the first thing he asks me about every Monday morning. So he cares about it a lot. Homeroom can afford it. It's not a big deal to us, but it means a lot to him. So it's something that will incentivize like a high level performance if it's a performance-based role. And then, you know, you got to think about how you can connect relationally with your VAs, as well as keep in mind advancement opportunity. Just like any other employee you would have, they're thinking about their career, they're thinking about advancement, they want to have a relationship with you, their manager. That stuff has to be a part of how you think about it. And also holidays, if you can give them their local holidays when feasible, that's really appreciated. Last VA tip, use TransferWise. Very limited fees for international payment transfers. It's amazing. PayPal is possible, but it's way more expensive. So TransferWise is anyone that's trying to pay people out of the country, TransferWise is amazing, is incredible. The last thing I'm going to do here is spend about 3 to 5 minutes going through the homeroom real estate investor offering. Basically how we work with real estate investors to buy co-living properties, and then what our real estate clients get. So we reduce risk for our investors and add more revenue to so make the pie bigger for everyone. And we add better property care. And how we reduce risk is we're the master tenants with our investors. So we guarantee 0 vacancy lease commitments for 3 years. And then we guarantee we'll offer a renewal at the end of that lease period. We also include no-cost property management. The way we make our money is as the master tenant, we sublease out the rooms to individual co-living tenants, and then we make a spread that way. So there's no cost property management to you, but it's really high-end property management. All the tips and tricks I've mentioned, we use. We have maid service in there monthly, grading the property for cleanliness, making sure your property is in awesome shape. We also are looking in great areas. One of the things about young professional tenants, they're only willing to live in the affordable but up and coming areas, the good areas. That's where we buy properties, and that's where that's where the appreciation potential really is most of the time as well. Here's an example of a property that a real estate investor purchased for us in Kansas City. It was $195,000. The out-of-pocket was $37,653. Homeroom guaranteed rent to them of $1,700. Their monthly mortgage was $1,244. After vacancy, there's $0 there because we guarantee rent. Property management is free. We ask investors to set aside $150 a month of their own, and we forecast monthly cash flow for this property to be about $306 going into the deal. The cash yield was 10%. The ROI was 27%. So the lenders here, they're really excited to do it. They are on the younger side, and they really wish that co-living was around when they were looking for roommates back in the day. Yeah, and it's been a really nice performance. They've actually outperformed these numbers. These are the numbers we provide them with going in. We try to beat those. We create this really nice website. This is the house we were just talking about, the Lenzer's property, with information. There's a floor plan of each room. You can actually meet individual roommates. There's Joshua. These are actually roommates in the property today. Read and see if it feels like a good fit, because you can see their hobbies, their jobs. In addition to that, you can take a virtual tour of the property. So if you're coming from out of state, you can see the entire property. You can understand the floor plan, the layout, the coloring, the furniture. Furniture is provided. One of the things I learned when I was in Austin is that having roommates try to buy their own furniture is a huge mistake. They get the cheapest, crappiest stuff, and it's hard for them to get delivered, and splitting the money is hard. So we just provide that. That's part of the investment package. We have a chore wheel here. We have, some basic kitchen essentials. When a roommate moves in on day one, they'll be able to cook, clean, do everything. And then they can walk through the rooms that are available. Our investor process is fairly simple, just a simple purchase, really. You get pre-approved, that's sort of the starter's pistol for our team. Then our team will actually analyze a customized pro forma with you and then buy the property. We'll set up and lease it to excellent tenants, manage and maintain, and eventually we'll help you evaluate an exit. Our company has brokerage partnerships, so we can help you sell it. You can also sell it mid-lease to another co-living investor. And then our approach has a lot of advantages. Our competitors in the turnkey space typically are doing flips in pretty bad areas, and their property management is outsourced and expensive. We are typically in great neighborhoods with excellent and free property management, much better. We're focused in Kansas City right now. That's our biggest market. Really nice cash flow, really nice startup growth. Tech job growth on a percentage basis is great. Great medicine, nice job growth, good population growth. And this is probably my favorite chart of Kansas City. We've actually seen only one price decline over the last 50 years, and that was 2008. 2001 tech bubble burst, prices went up. Hyperinflation of the late 70s, prices went up, or stayed static. So, you know, to invest in an asset that's only gone down once in a half a century is pretty, and leverage at 5-to-1 is a pretty nice opportunity. Dallas is another city we're really bullish on. We have expanded there today. Dallas has seen multiple headquarters move there over the last 10 years. You get 7.5 per year. Schwab is moving there. We're really bullish on Dallas in terms of appreciation potential. Kansas City, stable as a rock, great cash flow. Dallas is good cash flow, but also we think has a nice appreciation. Frequently asked questions. So what happens after the initial 3-year lease? We guarantee to offer a lease renewal at the end of it. And the second term will be up to 5 years. What happens if homeroom can't rent my property? We have basically an exit plan if homeroom cannot rent your property for any reason. We will pair you with a property manager at the beginning of your lease so that they will be able to actually take over the property on your behalf, on our behalf, and convert it to a single family rental. So it'll still be a great property in a great area, just like we initially found. It'll perform a little differently. You'll have a standard property manager, but it'll still perform really, really well. And then what if you want to sell your property? Homeroom can help you with that with our brokerage partnership. But you can also sell it however you want at the end of your lease. But mid-lease, you can also sell it to other co-living investors. And this is the team. Me, I've been doing co-living and living. I've been a roommate for the last 18 years. John Wolf Sr., co-founder of a technology startup in Palo Alto, money management educator and real estate investor. And Saurabh helps us with analytics, help us find kind of hot areas for real estate investing. And he's a data scientist. Here's a few KC opportunities examples, essentially 190,000 to 230,000, 7 to 10% cash on cash returns. These properties are no longer available, but these are just examples of the type of properties we target. And that is all for me, Bobby.
That was great. Thank you, Johnny. Johnny, did you want to mention the one property in Dallas? I know it's something you're evaluating, but I don't know if you have the spreadsheet handy or.
Yeah, I can pull it up, no problem. So Bobby, what our team will do is we don't hold inventory. We think that buying off the MLS means you're going to get a good price property. And it's not going to be a cheap flip. So we will send these out to kind of the people that are on our list. And so one of the current properties we have that our Dallas agent looked at was property in the Dallas-Fort Worth area on Trinity Street. This is sort of the summary of the specs on the property. The down payment is $36,750. We'll always trying to get the closing costs rolled into the deal. The inspection is $730. We always get a sewage inspection, really important. And then the setup cost, which includes the furniture, it includes any kind of post-inspection repairs, and any other costs to kind of get the home ready for co-living is $14,400. So out of pocket is $51,880. With all those costs, we're estimating 8.5% cash on cash returns and an average annual return on investment of 27% approximately. And we do, we have a video of it. We have, we do a Google Street View, we do Zillow. We basically are looking, we have someone locally in the market that's an expert at this stuff. And he is plugging in these numbers, how much we think we can get it for, what's the appreciation. We're pretty conservative there. 2.41% is inflation plus 0.5%. I really think that Dallas is going to outperform that, but we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. And then you just see kind of each individual thing. We have 15% down in this model. You can change that if you want, go all cash, you can go 20% down. Repairs allowance, and then you can see that it all flows through down to this 8.5 cash on cash, 27% ROI on a 3-year basis. This doesn't include depreciation or tax savings because we know that's a little bit different for everyone. But when you factor those in, it can be, the numbers can get much better. So.
Got it. So folks, if you're, intrigued or interested in learning a little bit more, reach out to Johnny. I think, Johnny, your contact. And
yeah, let me put it on the screen here. There we go.
There we go. Great. So now we'll open it up for some Q&A for both Sarah and for Johnny. There was one question that did come up from Doug. Sarah, do you have any suggestions for workaround for leases that have water included as landlord pay already? I mean, is there any workaround?
Yeah, so it depends on where the property is located. If it's in LA or San Francisco rent control properties, you need to wait for a new lease altogether. If it's not in those two markets, there's a couple others included that I could chat about, Santa Monica, West Hollywood, just depending. But for the majority of the other locations here in California and elsewhere, other states, much more straightforward. If you're on a month-to-month lease, you just need to give a 30-day notice. If you're in that initial year term, you need to wait for the renewal period, so the 30 days before that. So yeah, no problem making changes to existing lease terms under those conditions. Again, it just depends on the strictness or the severity of the rent control laws where the property is located.
Got it. Makes sense. And another question for Sarah. Sarah, is there a minimum size or the number of units where it becomes more feasible or economical to use your system, or not? It doesn't.
No, not at all. Like I said, I mean, we do everything from single family to duplexes on up. And we actually I just had a conversation with someone yesterday that has a property in Los Angeles so he's actually renting it. He lives there, and it's a big property, and he's subletting rooms.
Sure.
So he's got 8 other people in the property. So it's one property with one, set of bills, but we can, divide that up amongst even the roommates. So yeah.
And for an ADU, so for example, you could have a primary residence and an ADU in the backyard, but sometimes it's only 1 meter coming into the house. So that helps as well.
Of course, yeah.
Very nice. Question for Johnny. Johnny, what are the eviction laws in Kansas City? I'm sure they're a lot friendlier than California, but do you run into eviction issues in Kansas City?
Yeah, so we have a track record of never having to evict anyone via court proceedings. Okay. We have a process, but we generally are going to use a cash for keys methodology to get roommates out, and that has worked for us in the past. Our lawyer has drawn up a process for us, but in terms of issues with evictions, obviously there's an issue for everyone right now in terms of non-payment eviction issues, but the cash for keys has worked for us. And the 2 times we've actually had to get someone to leave.
Yep. And obviously, the upfront screening is the most important. And I'm sure you have some very stringent, very strict rules or procedures to make sure, this is not going to be a problematic person. So
our average credit score is actually in the 730s. So we, for the entire of the year, we've actually had more than 99% on-time rent payments. That we can't say 100 because we had 2 that were late, which we kind of wish we could say 100. But it's been we have really amazing young professionals. Additionally, it's very affordable housing, so they, with their really nice incomes, can afford to pay rent kind of through thick and thin.
Absolutely. I mean, if they had to move out, they would probably have to pay a lot more to live somewhere else.
Yep.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Um, and as far as the benefits of homeroom, you know, I know you highlighted the fact that you're managing the property. The investor, you've got a corporate guarantee, so the investor is, you know, sort of, they can sleep at night knowing that, you know, the rent will come in and they won't have to chase down the rent and all that. Can you just dive into that a little bit more? Why this model is so much better than traditional rentals in a remote area?
Yeah, so you know, we paid rent on time hundreds of times. So, you know, with any tenant, there's going to be risk. Obviously, that's part of the real estate game.
Yeah.
But when you compare us to any tenant, you know, we paid hundreds of times. We have, you know, an impeccable track record, and we have a model in which we're making a good amount of a healthy income all the time that helps us continue to pay rent on time every time. You know, and we have 120 people with great incomes paying us rent. So that just provides the revenue we need to pay rent and on time with regularity.
And all the tenant calls, maintenance, and so on, you're handling them. That's not coming back to the investor, correct?
Right. The investor, you know, most of our investors, they'll get an invoice if there's an issue, like a repair needs to be done. They'll find out about it after, but there's never been a case in the history of our company in which, unless an investor wants us to notify them of issues, we generally don't, right? So there's never been an issue that's big enough that we had to call them. So we take all those late night calls and we solve all those problems, and it's just pretty much you get a check every month from us, same day every month, and you can kind of count on that. So
Makes sense. Makes sense. Question for Sarah. Sarah, is this only for water, or what if they have a shared electric meter or a PG&E gas meter?
Yeah, so we primarily do water, sewer, and trash. And then depending on the setup of the property and where it's located, gas and electric. Especially for common areas, we can do that. Most of the times tenants are going to have their own account set up for gas and electric. So that usually applies to common areas, but sometimes they are master metered. Other things that we can bill back for would be amenities like landscaping, pest control. If you have internet or Wi-Fi that you're providing to the tenants, or for common spaces, we can also bill back for those types of amenities or services.
Got it. Got it. Very nice. Very nice. All right. Folks, if you have questions for Johnny or for Sarah, just unmute yourself, go ahead and ask away, or you can chat it. But I know you probably have a few more questions, but or you can reach out to them directly if you don't want to ask.
You know, I actually had a question for Johnny, and if I missed this in the presentation, sorry, but just out of curiosity, was there a pet policy? Do people have pets at the properties?
we actually don't allow pets. We think that 6 living creatures is like enough for a house. Unfortunately, pets can be sort of dicey roommates. Most of the time they're great, but if they're bad, then it becomes a huge problem. And then there's allergies, and we want to be open to everybody. So there's a lot of reasons we've chosen not to do pets yet. I do think in the future we'll probably allow pets. It's just not today.
Gotcha.
Great. All right, folks, like I said, you know, if you have questions, reach out to Johnny and Sarah. You have their contact information. But once again, both of you and all my members, thank you for joining us, for spending your time with us. We'll do another event in about 3 weeks. We'll announce that. So we're looking to bring you know, new innovative ideas. If you know somebody who's developing something interesting in the real tech, prop tech space, or has an interesting business model, please do connect them with me. If you don't mind, thank you, Doug. I'll do a quick demo of our a software that that I'm looking for some some beta testers on. So this is my new project that I've been working on during COVID. So I had some, it's been more than COVID. It's been about a year now, but we're partnered with Livable and with Homeroom and a bunch of other companies. But we have built a platform that allows you to track the performance of the financial performance. So Livable, has a dashboard for your utilities, but we have a dashboard that tracks the performance of your real estate assets. So here's one, for example, and I'd love for you to, give it a shot. We are looking for people to try it out and test it out. This is all, kind of sample data, but I'll just go in here. I can look at the performance of the assets last year. I can look at all the financials. Actually, maybe this is not a good example. Let me find another one. There we go. So yeah, this is actuals. And then you can look at all the transactions in the system. We are integrated to banks in a secure way, but we can also, if you have Appfolio, Buildium, Cozy, Hemlane, any of the property management applications, we are connected to those. So you can store all your documents, all your pictures, and so on and so forth. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this, please do reach out to me. It's free, and we hope you'll like it. We built it for real estate investors like yourself. So, all right. With that, thank you, everybody, and have a good evening. And we'll see you in about 3 weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Bobby. Thank you for having us.
Good day.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.
See you guys.
Thank you.